Hello, everyone, and welcome to WP Roundtable. I'm Jason Crawford, independent web designer in Medellin, Colombia, and we got a special today, so I'm going to pass it off to Kyle.
Hey everybody, this is Kyle. I'm a lead developer for Real Big Marketing based in Jackson, Michigan. Today, we've got a real special guest that we're going to talk to and learn all about. This guy is a pretty cool guy. Really got me into some cool stuff into WordPress. First time I met him and saw him talking at WordCamp. He is a WordPress extraordinaire, a developer of epic proportions. He is a author, he is a rap star, he is a comedian, he is a WordCamp t-shirt model, he is a community organizer for WordPress, he is a Midwesterner in the US, and he is happy to be here. So, Brad Parbs, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I would say some of those things that you just listed are true, and some of those things I try to keep under wraps a little bit. So you've definitely uncovered the. You found my Friendster profile where I listed all of that. But thanks for having me. It's my first time on the show, and I'm excited. I like the fact that we have so many cool WordPress podcasts, and more of them are always popping up. So thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Brad. We're both big fans of all kinds of WordPress podcasts out there, too. The Roundtable is just another one for those of you who only have Monday nights available. And so we are glad to have you on today. So we're going to get right to the questions. We've got a whole bunch to ask because the world wants to know more about you. I'd like to start, actually, at the beginning, if we could. So, what were you doing before you got into the web?
So that's actually a really funny story. So when I was a kid growing up, I never ever imagined I would be like doing anything related to the internet. I can remember every teacher I ever had, like on the report card and like the end of year report that my parents got, it always said, you know, Brad would make a great teacher. Brad would make a great teacher. Like every year, year after year, and I was like, oh, I think I'd really enjoy that. And so ever since I can remember, and I remember like the day that this changed, ever since I can remember, that's all I ever wanted to be was like a teacher at a high school or a grade school. Never imagined doing anything else. You know, most kids are like, oh, when I grow up, I want to be an astronaut. I want to be an NBA star. For me, it was always, I want to be a teacher, no questions asked. And when I was in like high school, right before I started high school, I started playing around with the internet just because I was always nerdy, always like tech things, you know, gadgets, programming. I was always really into that. And so the first time I ever touched the internet, and the first time I ever touched like making a website was right before I went to high school. And it was actually really funny. So our high school was, you had to do a typing test when you were, graduate 8th grade, you're about to go to high school. Our high school made you do a typing test so they could determine whether or not you knew how to type yet. And all the kids that didn't know how to type, they had to take a typing class, and it was required. Some people tested out of that because they already knew how to type. And I remember getting there, and it was in one of the like computer labs that they had, and the teacher who was kind of supervising it was like, okay, here's a printed sheet of paper. Just type this in Microsoft Word and then print it out, and you're done. So I flew through it way before anyone else, and I gave him the sheet, and I was like, I'm done. And I typed it all up. He's like, cool, just kind of like hang out. The instructions said bring a book in case you finish early. I was like, yeah, I brought a book. I brought a notepad for sketching, whatever. And so I finish super quickly, and everyone else is still working, and I look up, and the teacher had his computer connected to the projector because he had some instructions on there, and he never disconnected it. And I look up, and he's working on like a CGI email script. And the only reason I knew that's what it was because I had used the exact same one like 2 weeks ago on like the first website I was building. I was like, I want it to send email, and so I was like, I'm watching him debug it, and I was like, oh, I don't mean to interrupt, but I had that same problem 2 weeks ago. That line of code in the example code is wrong. You need to change it to this. And that was the first moment where I was like, maybe being a teacher isn't what I want to do, because that was really fun knowing that I can program. And so when it was time after high school, time to decide what I want to go to college for, I was like, hey, being a teacher is awesome. I also like getting a paycheck. That's a cool thing I'd like to do. So I went to school for computer science, and then jumped around majors and eventually found myself in the web. And here we are today, I guess. I mean, there's more in the middle there, but
yeah. Did you ever actually get a chance to do any teaching, or did you just not pursue it?
No, I didn't pursue it at all. I actually got hired. I never graduated college. I got hired at the first web company I worked for halfway through college, and then since then have just freelanced, worked different places, things like that. But the best teacher I ever had in high school was a teacher who he didn't go to school for teaching. He graduated college and worked in an industry in the field, for 10, 15, 20 years, and then went back and got a teaching degree and then taught. And I found it to be when he would say, you're going to use this in the real world, that was the one teacher where I was like, oh yeah, I believe you. When your math teacher tells you, oh, you're going to use this in the real world, but they went to school to teach math, and now they're teaching math, he knew what you actually used. And so I think sometime in the future I'll go back and get a teaching degree and maybe do that. But I think it kind of comes out, I love speaking at WordCamps, and I love, writing documentation, and I love sharing my knowledge or sharing things other people have shared with me. I love sharing that with other people. So I think, although I'm not a teacher, I'd like to think I kind of bring the inspiration and, that childhood desire to teach. I think I bring that out as much as I can.
Well, I'm certainly glad to learn whatever you got to teach us today. But my only real question is about the Dalek poster behind you there.
Yeah, so that is a Dalek. It's from the episode of Doctor Who when Winston Churchill they build Daleks. I'm a huge nerd. I'm a Whovian. I wish I could show you all the other weird posters I have in my room, in my office here, but sadly the computer doesn't like to turn when it's plugged into stuff. I always try to, whenever I'm on video calls, try to place my head so the word victories right above it.
Ah, nice.
Hopefully it's not too distracting.
No. That's pretty cool.
I need this, a friend of mine who's an artist just recently, this is kind of morbid and creepy, but just did a poster series on these really cool drawings of Milwaukee serial killers, and I have those, they're in the mail right now, and those might replace the Dalek. But I think they're small enough where you won't be able to tell they're posters about serial killers, so hopefully people won't judge me too hard for having those.
All right. Well, there's that. That's something we learned. I didn't know that. So that's the point. Is we got to learn more about you. So keep sharing those anecdotes, and maybe we could segue into the world of WordPress. What was the step that took you there? You were just stuck at the web, you said, and you probably tried out a few different things, just like I did. What brought you into the WP space?
Yeah. So. So I started playing with the web way before I'd heard of WordPress. HTML, just static HTML with tables, all that beautiful, fun stuff. And then when I got to college, I was in computer science, which is, most colleges, nothing they teach in computer science is related to the web at all. It's Java, it's C++, it's all of these compiled languages that are pretty far removed from the web. They still exist in some places, but not related to the web at all. And I hated that. I was like, I hate having to go on the command line, and I hate having to compile this program. I like I liked when I wrote HTML and I did something and I could see it. It was that instant gratification. Which is funny because now I'm a huge fan of the command line. But when I started out, it was like my nightmare. And so after a couple semesters of computer science, I was like, this is not my thing. I've always been in art, maybe like graphic design. So I did a couple semesters of graphic design, and I was like, they taught a lot of, you had to take a drawing class and you had to take a painting class, and I was like, this is not my thing. I can't draw, I can't paint. I can make really cool computer graphics, and I can do weird experimental computer art. So I was like, this isn't my thing either. And I one day just randomly ran into one of the like recruiters slash like advisor of the School of Information Studies, and we were just chatting. I had known him because he helped out when I worked at the college doing like freshman orientation and tours, and we were just chatting, over lunch or something like that. And I was like, I don't know what I want to major in. I tried computer science, which I thought was my thing. I didn't like it. I tried this. I didn't like that. I tried this. I didn't like it. I tried film, and it was cool. I didn't like it. And I was thinking about going back and maybe just focusing on teaching, but I was like, I don't know if I really want to do that. I want to do something programmery. He goes, oh, you should try information studies. It focuses a lot on like data architecture, and it was originally library sciences, and now it's information studies. And he goes, oh, and they also have a certificate for digital art. And I was like, these are all the things that I love. I love information and I love digital art. And so that's the program I would have graduated in if I finished it. And that was the point where I really realized, like, the web is what I want. That's what I want to be. So I did that for a few semesters. And then a friend of mine, her dad ran a web development company, like a local small shop, just, catered to small businesses. And one of their employees had just left. And my friend was like, oh, you do some web stuff. HTML and CSS, a tiny bit of PHP. You should talk to my dad, who's the boss of this company. So I talked to him, and he was like, yeah, you should come work, over the summer. Just come and work at this development shop. You don't need to have that good of skills. What you have is perfect. You can learn the rest. And so I took that job, and it was like the coolest thing, because it was my first like adult job. I wasn't getting a salary. I was still getting paid hourly because I didn't know how to negotiate for a salary. And so his first thing was like, you'll get paid this much per hour. And I was like, that sounds great. Let's do it. And they were doing mostly custom PHP applications. Every site, they had this hacky internal CMS, and they just modified it every time. And then, every project built on what it was, and which sounds really good in theory, but it ends up being just this hacky bunch of code that doesn't work half the time. And so we were doing that, and I was learning PHP with it, and someone, I saw WordPress online, or someone mentioned it to me, and I was like, mind blown. I was like, this is what we need to do. It looks just perfect. We built, every site we're doing, we're hacking together these little bits of CMS stuff. Let's build off one of those. So I was like, hey, I think we can save a lot of developer time by using WordPress. So we tried it out on a couple projects, and the first time I had used it seriously, I think I had installed it a couple years ago just for a quick blog, when I was playing around stuff, but I never remembered that. When I was using it seriously to build client sites, I was like, this is the bee's knees. I love this. And for the next year and a half, 2 years when I worked for that web shop, I just breathed WordPress. I slept, ate, everything was WordPress. I would go home from work and just look up documentation, play with it, get better and better. I actually, I learned PHP from using WordPress. I learned WordPress PHP before normal PHP. And so I used it just out of necessity at the beginning, and then, just through this company, just kept using it, and then at one point, I started getting involved in the local community, and we had our WordCamp, and in Milwaukee, and I spoke there, helped organize that, helped out with the meetup group. Eventually left that company and got hired by a Joomla company. Because I was like, hey, if I love WordPress this much, I'll love Joomla as well. And I worked there for about a month before I just quit without another job set up, and I started freelancing. And then that was kind of what changed from working from places I didn't like to working places I love. So in a long way, that's how I got started with WordPress.
Yeah, that's cool. So that's where you transitioned into your own freelance thing and eventually formed what you were doing when I originally met you, the Snow Day group, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So tell us about Snow Day.
Yeah, so I freelanced for a couple of years, and I really liked it. You know, if you speak to anyone who's a freelancer, it's, you know, I love being able to set my own schedule. I love working on the projects I want to work on, and I love freelancing. It was a lot of fun, but I learned two things about myself. I learned that I'm really bad at keeping myself in check. Like, I'm really bad at scheduling out projects in a manageable way. I'm really bad at, you know, when I first started freelancing, the first couple of projects, I took on huge projects that I couldn't handle at once because I was like, oh, these people want to pay me for me to work? Yeah, of course I'm not going to say no to anyone. And it took me about 2 years to realize that, like, I'm bad at managing, you know, freelance projects on my own. And I also learned that I hate finding clients, and I hated doing billing and administrative stuff and taxes. And a friend of mine who I met at a startup weekend event, which is a really cool event. If anyone hasn't heard of it or hasn't gone to it, they should check it out. It's this event where you go and you say, hey, I'm a developer, or I'm a designer, or I'm a marketer, or I'm, you know, this or this or that. And you actually, some of them will give you a name tag that says, like, what your skills are. And everyone pitches ideas, and people join up, and the goal is to build a company over like 48 hours in a weekend. And a friend of mine introduced me to, who would later become my business partner at Snow Day, introduced me as, like, this is Brad, he's the WordPress guy. I was like, oh, nice to meet you. And Drew introduced himself. He was like, oh, I'm Drew. I need help with a WordPress site that a friend of mine, you know, is having me do. So we sat down for lunch, and he was like, okay, these are all the problems I'm having. I'd love it if you could, you know, help me out. I was like, yeah, of course. You know, those all seem like pretty simple things to fix. You know, I can definitely help you out. And then he was like, but it'd be really cool if you could also show me, like, what you're doing as you're doing it. And I was like, of course, this is, you know, I love doing that. And so we spent like 7 or 8 hours over the next couple of weeks, like, working through all of these problems of this WordPress site for a client of his. I was kind of low on client work at the time, so I was like, he had briefly mentioned, like, oh, it'd be really cool to have this feature or that feature. I was like, all right, let's build it together. And his background was more in business development and, you know, sales, and all of the things that I hated in my freelancing career were all things that, like, he was really good at. And he had just recently moved back from San Francisco to Milwaukee, and he had, you know, he's kind of looking for, like, what's next. You know, is he going to start a new company? Is he going to work for someone? And we kind of just at the same time were like, hey, our skills are very, very complementary. We should just join up and, like, combine our powers and see what we can do. And so we did. We spent a lot of time thinking of a name, and it was like weeks thinking of a cool name, because we're like, this is what, the name is the most important part. And I actually have it right here. We're at a co-working wine bar, and our name came from the beer tap that was on tap at the time, because we were like, you know, we had all these cool names. We're like, let's just use that one. He actually bought the beer tap that night, and I didn't know it. And when we dissolved the company, I took that with me, it's been a part of me ever since, which is really cool. So that's how we named our company. And Snow Day was awesome because we I had made all these connections through like Startup Weekend and the startup community, and Drew knew a lot of people, and so we were able to like start off like really quickly. Our first client was a national mortgage company because there was another web development agency in town who had a product they were also selling, and the product was getting more popular. And they're like, hey, we don't want to do any more client work. Here you go, Snowday, your first client can be this big mortgage company. And it just so happened that a lot of our work ended up being bigger companies like the university in town and things like that. And Snowday was just a ton of fun. I got to work on all the awesome projects that as a freelancer, I was like, I can choose my projects. It didn't really feel like that until I was working with him on Snowday, because he was the one that kept me in check. And rather than me saying yes to every project, he would say, no, your budget's too low, or no, we don't have enough time. And I started writing contracts for things, which I was always really bad at. Yeah, and it ended up after just over a year with Snowday, a friend of Drew's who ran a startup just got a lot of funding and offered Drew a job doing corporate sales. And because it was his friend, Drew was like, I'm going to take that. And I was like, that's fine. And I ended up then applying for Web Dev Studios, and Snowday kind of just fizzled out. I wish it could have gone longer, but it somehow seemed like a really good time for us to part ways and work on different things. I get really bored when I do stuff. A lot of the jobs, I've worked a lot of weird jobs because I get really bored at them quickly. And so it was a good time to end it. And then it was a dream come true to move from that to Web Dev Studios. I mean, Web Dev Studios was always... let me put it this way. When I first went to WordCamp Phoenix, I saw, for some reason, this story. This isn't the first time this happened, but for some reason, this story is what's always in my mind. A bunch of the people from Range were at one of the bars, and I felt like a giddy little schoolgirl because I was like, oh, they work for Range. Like, I want to meet you so badly. Because in my mind, it was always like Web Dev Studios, 10up, and Range are like the coolest companies. Like, I'd always want to meet all these people. I was such like a WordPress like fanboy. Like the first time I met all of the cool big community members, it was like the coolest thing in my life. And so when Lisa was like, "Hey, are you interested in working at Web Dev?" I was like, without a doubt, yes. Like what? Like let's make this happen. And I'm so glad it did. Working at Web Dev Studios is just a dream come true. I love it. So yeah, that's kind of how I got to where I am today.
Nice. What exactly do you do with Web Dev?
Yeah, so I'm a developer, primarily back-end developer, so a lot of functionality stuff. I do a little bit of front-end stuff because I'm okay at it and I enjoy it, but I definitely prefer the back-end stuff. And Web Dev Studios is really cool because there's something you're good at or something you prefer to do. They're really good at putting you, on the projects that you can do that. So, for example, we have a couple of people who really like building products, so they are put more on our projects that deal with our premium products and things like that. So I do a lot of development, back-end development. We do a lot of migrations when we're building, switching a client from their old CMS to WordPress. I do a lot of those migrations, which I love because I just love manipulating data and working with data. And yeah, so I like doing it all, and they let me, thankfully, kind of do front-end, back-end, all of that fun stuff.
Awesome, man. That's really cool, and I really, enjoyed hearing this weekend a lot about the stuff you get to do. It just sounds awesome. Web Dev Studios seems like such a cool company. I've always thought that they were doing awesome things, and they're snatching up all their great people, and just awesome, really cool companies out there. And I totally relate when you're talking about like going to see Range and all these other cool businesses in the community, because that's me now. I love going to feeling starstruck at WordCamps. These are the people that, that person to me for years has just been a gravatar that just shares wisdom and solves my problems and makes things that make my life easy. And here they are, having a
exactly.
with me. So
I Twitter stalked you for 2 years, and you're here in person.
Yeah, exactly. So you've had a lot of projects that you've been involved in that are pretty cool. Let's talk about Wolf.
Oh, yeah, so Wolf is something that it was really cool when I built it, and I'm sad that I haven't been able to dedicate much time to it in the past, year or so. So, Wolf was my starter theme that I built while I was working with Snow Day and working at Snow Day. We decided to just build a really cool starter theme because we were just knocking out projects as fast as we could. And I think everyone who's built a starter theme or modified underscores into their own personal project felt this way, whereas hey, there's all these things I do on every project, let's build them together. So before I built Wolf, I forked Aaron Holbrook's WP Wizard is what mine is called, and for the life of me, I'm blanking on the name as what the original name of it is. But anyway, it was a build script to just download and install WordPress locally. And so at Snow Day, my business partner, Drew, didn't know WordPress. And I was like, got him set up with WP Wizard so he could instantaneously spin up local development environments. And then it was like, okay, here's a project. I have a local install, super quick. It's got all the plugins. It's got everything set up. Now what? And I was like, all right, well, we start building the theme. We start building the plugins. And he was like, all right, well, how do I start building a theme? I'm like, all right, well, you download underscores, or you download this theme, and you start working out that. But make sure you change this and this, and make sure you add this to functions.php. And he's like, well, if we're doing all this, why don't we just have a starting place? So we built Wolf, and it's very opinionated, and I'm really surprised it got it's on WordPress.org because it does a lot of things a theme shouldn't do. I think everyone who's a developer knows the feeling when you look back at code you've written in the past, you're really embarrassed about it. So there's a lot of things in Wolf that it shouldn't be doing that should be moved into a plugin. But overall, it was really cool to build that. It was one of the first forks of underscores to add Sass to it. And so I used it as an example when I gave Sass talks at WordCamps and WP sessions. I built Wolf to I wanted to use it as a training tool. Oh, you want to add X functionality to your theme? Well, here I'm doing it in this theme. Here's how you do it. It was also really cool because it was all built with Sass, and it has all the theme hook alliance hooks in it. It was really, really quick to make child themes. So I have 3 or 4 child themes for it that all of them I built in less than 4 or 5 hours. They're not that crazy cool looking, but I just challenged myself, how fast can I build these themes out? I should put those on WordPress.org now that I'm talking about it. But that's what I love, is that when you build your own starter theme and you know every line of code in it really, really well, you can build off it really quickly. So for the Sass, I knew where every line of Sass was because I wrote it all. I know when I want to modify this, I know exactly where to go. So people who are developers, if they are freelancing or running their own shop, I've always said pick a starter theme or pick your starting place and just learn it as well as you can. If it's underscores, awesome, that's great. If it's Genesis, awesome, great. If it's whatever, it's this or that, just learn that as well as you can. And you're going to be able to make things just so much quicker and so much faster.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I remember you talking about when I first saw some of your talks and was introduced to Brad Parbs, and when I first started going to WordCamps, and even today, whenever I talk with other people, a lot of people know you as the Sass guy. Because you give a lot of Sass talks, and I bump into other people and they're like, oh, ever since we saw Brad's talk, we've been uses SaaS exclusively for our agency or whatever. It's just definitely like an awesome way to develop, for front end people, and you're one of the folks who's done a great job of kind of like advocating it and giving it a lot of, I think, exposure in the WordPress community.
Which I'm so glad, because that has changed my life, and I'm so glad more people are using it. It's actually really cool. So for the past 6 months, a couple of people from WebDev and a lot of just community members, we've been working on getting SaaS support natively into underscores. And just as of, I think, a week ago, now if you're on underscores.me, there's a box, Sassify, and it'll, when you download underscores, it'll bring in all of the Sass files to make it. So the full list of everyone who deserves props is on GitHub, but it's Tammy Lister and Greg Rickaby and a whole list of people. So check out underscores, because it now has Sass, and go on GitHub and look at all the people that worked on it, because it's a huge list of people. And it's so cool to see that happen. I love that more and more people are using Sass. I still have people come up to me, they're like, hey, you're the reason I started using Sass. And I'm just really excited that that's one more person using Sass, because it just makes everything so much better. I just can't advocate for using Sass. I just want everyone to know it's amazing.
Yeah, it's super awesome. Like, it blew my mind when I started getting into it. I was like, this is just freaking incredible. I think it's hugely appreciated by those of us who have just been stumbling our way along at this for a while and been using CSS and doing big front-end projects with just CSS, and now it's like, where has this been all this time? So, yeah, awesome. I thank you for introducing me to it.
I'm just glad more people are using Sass, because that's how we move the web forward, is by using new tools and new techniques.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, right? So another big project that you've worked on that I know you're known for as well, maybe not quite as much as the Sass thing, but a lot of people know Brad Parbs as the guy behind Logout Roulette.
Oh, I'm so glad we brought that up. So for those that don't know, people watching, so Logout Roulette is an amazing WordPress plugin. Tons of 5-star reviews. It changes people's lives. Go just type it into your install and add it. Don't read the description. Just add it, and you're good to go. Make sure you add it to every client site as well, because it will just change your life. Jokes aside, so what Logout Roulette does is super, super simple. It's like a couple lines of code. Every refresh of the admin page, which I believe counts AJAX requests as well as like front end when the admin bar is there, every single one, you have a 1 in 6 chance of just being straight up logged out. And so it came about, well, first I'll tell the story of when it got me. So I was building it on my computer and just testing it. Someone like recommended something, so I changed something, and I had it, just the code for it in a file in NU plugins on like a local install. It wasn't like a special site for the plugin. It was just like a project I'm working on for a client, and I just threw it in there quick to try it, and I forgot to remove it. And I experienced what it was like to have Logout Roulette installed and you don't know about it. So I'm using this local site, like working on actual work, and I get logged out of the admin. And I'm like, oh, that's, is WordPress, sometimes it's weird. Like, I don't know, maybe my session expired or something happened locally, I'll just log back in. And like 10 minutes later, 5 minutes later, I get logged out again. And it like kept happening, and I checked the plugins folder, and I'm like, it's Logout Roulette isn't there. Like, I made sure like Vagrant was running correctly, and I just couldn't figure it out. And after like 20 minutes, and after getting logged out like 10, 15 times, I'm like, oh, it's in the bottom of this random NU plugin. And it was so frustrating. So if you ever have just a horrible client who doesn't pay you, they will feel it it is so frustrating. So it actually came about at WebDev one day in our like we instant message all day because we're distributed, and it was someone brought up the question like, what simple tiny tweak could you do to the WordPress admin to just make it super frustrating to a new user? And we all use WordPress, so we're like, oh, randomly make it so all the links don't work, or invert the page, or do this, do that, do that. And I was like, it would be just hilarious if it randomly logs you out. And I was like, oh wait, I can build this plugin. And like 10 minutes later, I threw it on. I made it, had a zip file of it, and so I pinged Mika Epstein I DM'd her on Twitter, and I was like, I'm about to submit a plugin. If you like the concept of it, you should approve it right away. If you don't, we're just leave it. We don't need to approve it. And she's like, this is hilarious. This is the funniest thing I've ever heard. So she approved it. It still took a day because she's like, I'm not going to put you at the front of the list for that. There's more valuable plugins. You have to wait your time. But after about a day, it was on the .org repo, and people just started writing really good reviews because they must have used it and enjoyed it. And they're definitely truthful reviews and all fact-filled. And that's all I got roulette. You should check it out. There's actually been some really, I don't know any of the specific names, but I know there's been other roulette plugins made that are similar. I don't remember which ones exist and which don't, but if you want to build a fun plugin, here are some quick suggestions. Theme roulette changes your theme. Font roulette could change your fonts. You could have it randomly log you in as just a random user on every admin refresh, so you might be a subscriber or an admin. Ping me on Twitter, and I have like a text document with like a list of all these ideas. I just haven't built any of them yet.
I am never giving you administrator access to any site. You're scaring me, actually.
I'm pretty excited about that. Like, I want to see that list, and I want to make one of those. I think I'm going to make a roulette plugin after this episode, just 'cause that's awesome.
I believe it hides it from your plugin list, too, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since I've looked at the code, but I think it will hide. It won't be in the plugin list in the admin, so don't give me admin access to your site ever.
I'm not going to. Yeah, we've got a little bit of time left, but just want to point out if anybody has questions, anybody watching live has questions, shoot them at us.
That's darn right. I know there's a lot of people who just like have just been wondering so many things about Parbs. Just wish they could know more. There's just not enough. Great WordCamp presentations. We learn about Vagrant and Friends. We learn about SAS. We don't learn enough about Brad. So this is your opportunity, world, to learn more about the man behind Wolf, behind Log Roulette, and behind the glasses, Brad Parbs. So,
I want to shout out to another one of my projects that we can talk about. GIFs bin, or GIFs bin if you're don't know how to say things right. gifsb.in. It's on GitHub too. If you have pull requests for GIFs, this is my GIF collection. I hit a milestone about a month ago. I have more than 10 gigs of GIFs on there, and GitHub hasn't shut down the repo yet, even though there's a full history of 10 gigs of GIFs in Git. But check that site out. It's way more rewarding than Logout Roulette.
That's extremely valuable. We're going to make sure that goes in the show notes, and everybody knows about it.
Yeah, it's reaction GIF. It's just for every situation in your life. You always need those.
Yeah. Oh, it's so great, and I love having a central resource for all of these GIFs. Where I want to use one all the time, but it can be such a struggle to search the entire interwebs for the perfect GIF for this perfect situation. By the time you find the one that's just right, just the moment's gone. And so GIFspin by Brad Parbs is your solution for those problems.
There's even a JSON feed of all the GIFs. And if you go to Justin Sternberg's GitHub, you can download an Alfred workflow. You use Alfred on your Mac. There's an Alfred workflow to search all of GIFsbin as well as Justin and Greg Rickaby's GIF collections. Also, jtsternberg.com !GIFs will give you a GUI to search thousands and thousands and thousands of GIFs.
That's phenomenal.
At
Phenomenal.
Revenue Studios, we like our GIFs. We use quite a bit of them.
So I've observed, and that's wonderful. And us WordCamp attendees and WordPress community members value that very highly.
So the worst part about it, so if you've been to one of my WordCamp talks, like there's always one GIF in there, minimum. Sometimes there's a full slide called the GIF break, and it's a full slide of just GIFs everywhere. So at WordCamp Milwaukee a couple weeks ago, we did our Foundation Friday, and the organizers and I were putting together the schedule, and we had one that was template hierarchy. And I was like, oh, hey, I gave a talk called Template Hierarchy in the Foundation Friday at WordCamp Chicago last year. I'll just give this one and use the same slide deck, like, we'll be perfect. And I couldn't find the original keynote file for the slide deck. So I was like, that's fine. I'll just load it up on Speaker Deck and click through. It's a there won't be transitions, but that'll be fine. Totally forgot that I had 2 full slides of GIFs. And the worst part of someone having GIFs in their presentation is when none of the GIFs animate, and it's just 2 slides of static images that look sad. And I had to tell the audience, I was like, I'm sorry, this is all I can do for you. So if you do put GIFs in your presentation, save the original files. It'll come back to bite you if you don't.
Thanks for that valuable advice. A lot of life lessons that were taken away from this episode. Episode 19, I think, is what we're at. Is that right, Jason? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
Yeah, exciting. Couldn't be better here with Brad. So we've got more questions with our time remaining, and just dive even deeper into Brad's world. Turns out, I didn't know this until today. You're an author, a book author, not just a plugin author or a theme author or a WordCamp talk author or a GIF repo author, but a book author, a legit book. Tell us about that.
So I don't know if I'd use the word legit when I talk about it. It's more of a list. But a couple years ago, I did a pretty big art project that's a story for another day. But I did an art project, and it ended up, it was related to being awesome and complimenting people and making people feel good. And someone's like, oh, you should make a book. So I made a list. I would say it's more of a list than a book. I made a list of 100 ways to be awesome. And I compiled it into a book and put it on Amazon. And self-published it. There was no publisher involved, so it's like anyone can literally do this. It was super easy, not impressive at all. So it's a list of 100 ways how to be awesome. But the cool thing was that every copy I sold, and all the money I ever made, went right back into different art projects I was doing with a group of friends in Milwaukee. But the even cooler thing about the book is that I've open sourced everything about it. So you can buy it on Amazon for like $10, $12, or you can download the PDF from GitHub, or you can even download the source files. And you can literally, it's licensed under Creative Commons. I may have put it under public domain at some point. I don't know. Whatever the license is, you can do anything you want. You can probably sell it and I won't even sue you. I don't care. But I don't think it's that impressive. It's more of a list than a book. The real book authors have publishers that they go through, and those are the impressive people. Although, Google does suggest, when you search Brad Parbs, it does suggest Brad Parbs, how to be awesome. So somewhere in a database in Google, one of Google's data centers, there's like a Brad Parbs cluster and an awesome cluster, and there's a line between it, and Google somewhere in its code thinks I'm awesome. And if that's not something to be proud of in your life, what else is there?
I'd be pretty happy if people called me awesome too. But it's not going to happen anytime soon.
I think that's pretty cool, and I think writing a book that's really should be on the list of how to be awesome, and I hope it is. So I'd be surprised if no filmmakers have approached you for the rights for how to be awesome.
Well, they didn't have to because they just grabbed it. Creative Commons. They need that for the rights.
Okay. All right. So next question that we have on our list. Let's talk about WordCamps.
Perfect. WordCamps are the greatest thing ever. So I am a WordCamp just addict. I go to a lot of WordCamps. I've been trying to go to slightly less this year, but WordCamps are the coolest thing. If there's anyone watching this live or when it's on YouTube and you haven't been to a WordCamp, find one in your area. If there's not one in your area, either start one or travel slightly further to get to one. I've met so many awesome people at WordCamps. I've learned so much at WordCamps. They're the coolest thing. So I'm assuming everyone who's watching knows what a WordCamp is. If they don't, it's a weekend conference about WordPress that happens in a bunch of cities all over the world. In fact, there's some every single weekend of the year, which is just blows my mind that WordPress is big enough that we can do that. So I've spoken at a lot of WordCamps. I've attended a lot of WordCamps, and the single most, like, when I first was doing it, going to my first 4 WordCamps, there's some people I met that had been to some already, and their suggestion to me as like a WordCamp newbie, it's weird to think of myself as that now, but their suggestion was like just talk to people. If you see someone that you look up to, just go up to them and talk to them. Like, they're a normal person, you're a normal person, and I followed that advice religiously. There were superstars in the WordPress community, people like we were talking about before. I Twitter stalk you, and I just went up to them. I was like, I'm Brad Parbs. I love your work. I follow you on GitHub. I read your Twitter. Like, I read every blog post you write, and a lot of those people are like I now talk with all the time. I share code with them, or I spitball, and I think, I walked up to like people like Lisa St. Wilson, who's from Wisconsin, so people assume we just know each other. But I met her first at a WordCamp, and I just walked up and I'm like, I love your book, I'm a fan of you, and eventually you're my boss now. Same with Brad Williams and Brian Messalina. WordCamps, the only thing I wish more WordCamps would be do more unconference track thing or leave more room in between sessions, because other than meeting amazing people you look up to, the second best thing at WordCamps is when you are sitting next to someone and you're both coding or you're both trying to solve a problem, and you see them do like a keyboard shortcut, or you see them pull up, like do something in Sublime, or you see them like do a fancy thing with Alfred, or you see them do these really tiny little tricks. My entire workflow on my computer has been built up by the tiny little tricks I've learned just from a ton of people over the years. I saw someone at a WordCamp a while ago like type something, and their computer made it into a paragraph of code, and I was like, you typed 4 letters, how did you do that? And they're like, oh, it's Text Expander, I set up a shortcut for it. And to them it's super obvious because they've been using it for a year. But to me, I had never heard of that, and I was like, that's the greatest thing in the world. And I've picked up so many cool things at WordCamp. So if you're at a WordCamp and you see someone who's sitting on a computer, like coding or working, you sit next to them, like don't be creepy and like watch them work, but sit next to them and just work. And when you see something out of the corner of your eye that they do, you ask them about it, because people love talking about like cool things they've set up on their computer. You know, like if you set up snippets in your editor and someone asks you about it, it feels really cool to talk about it. So those are my 2 pieces of advice of what to do at a WordCamp. And yeah, I just love WordCamps, man. They're my favorite thing. I wish I could go to more of them.
Yeah, I love WordCamps too. Like, really love freaking going to WordCamps. I go to everything I could in the Midwest. And what WordCamps do you think we're going to see Brad Parbs attending here in the future? The rest of this year, maybe next year for sure?
Yeah, that's a really tough question. So I wanted to kind of cut down on my WordCamps this year, just because the last couple of years I've traveled quite a bit, and it takes a toll on you. So I don't currently have any WordCamps planned for the rest of this year. I think I will be attending WordCamp Ann Arbor. I won't be speaking. I might go to WordCamp Baltimore. I'm not sure. I have no WordCamps that I can think of that are for sure and steady in stone. Next year, I'll definitely be at WordCamp Phoenix. I like to go every year because Wisconsin winters are the worst thing in the entire universe. And WordCamp Phoenix is in the middle, like beginning of January. So if you say I could go to like Arizona for a week during like horrible Wisconsin winter, oh, I'm there. I'll also be at, of course, WordCamp Milwaukee next year, so everyone should mark that on your schedules. WordCamp Chicago, things like that. But not as many as last year. I like to tone it down. I will be, I think, giving a session on WP Sessions coming up in the next few months. If you like WordCamps and you can't get enough of them, WP Sessions is awesome. Brian Richards, the organizer of WordCamp Grand Rapids, where Kyle, you and I were this weekend, he runs WP Sessions, which is it's just awesome. It takes the feel of a WordCamp and learning these cool things from just awesome people. You just do it at your leisure in your pajamas at home. It's really cool.
And I just want to know if you have any withdrawal symptoms here, because you sounded like you were all excited, and then you said, but I'm not going anymore this year. So what are the withdrawal symptoms from WordCamp?
You know, it really is tough. It's, you know, I watch Twitter, you know, I see all these WordCamps. Even when I'm at a WordCamp, I see the hashtag of other WordCamps. And David Bissett, who made WPArmchair.com, is the only way I survive these WordCamps that I can't go to, because if you haven't been there, for every WordCamp he sets up where it pulls in all the tweets and Instagram photos and just all of this stuff for the hashtag of a WordCamp, and that's how I fight my WordCamp withdrawals is just, you know, tweeting with the people who are there and things like that.
I just got a tweet from Roland Cito. He didn't have a question for you. His only comment was fan demand Brad Parbs at WordCamp Ann Arbor this year. So that's all we got from the audience right now. So just factor it in. We got a few.
Yeah, I definitely want to get out there. Ann Arbor is one of the cities. I have a list of. Before I started going to WordCamps, I never traveled, like ever. So I made a list of all the cities I want to go to in the United States, and Ann Arbor is on that list. So I don't think I have an excuse to not go.
I'll make it worth your while. All right. So we've got a few shorter questions to kind of round out the hour. Maybe we can kind of like keep, just buzz through some of these and just get the facts, check the facts, and hit the good stuff. So, Brad.
Lightning round. This is the lightning round here.
We could call it that. All right. Who in the WordPress community inspires Brad Parbs?
These are tough questions, huh? It's kind of it's going to sound like kind of a cop-out answer, but it's my coworkers. All the people at Web Dev Studios every day inspire me to write better code, to write, you know, more easily understandable code. Especially Brian Richards, who sadly isn't with Web Dev Studios anymore because WP Sessions is taking off. But him and Justin Sternberg have inspired me so much. Like just every single day, I think about them. In fact, Brian Richards, in passing, mentioned a book that he enjoyed, which was Clean Code, the Handbook of Agile Software, and I bought it immediately on Amazon that day. And that's what it is. The fact that I can work with these coworkers is awesome. So those are the people that inspire me.
It's a good answer. Not much of a cop-out. I think WebDev Studios practically is the who's who of WordPress anyway, so I would like agree with you. Maybe give us an idea of some cool plugins that we haven't heard of. Give the audience the inside scoop.
That's a tough question because these days I've been writing. We do a lot of custom plugins. Here's a really cool plugin. It's more of a library, but custom meta boxes and fields by WebDev Studios. If you go on GitHub and you click on branches, the 2.0 branch is currently being finished up, and there's some cool new features, a lot of cool new things. And I definitely recommend that. Otherwise, Logout Roulette. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but just the best plugin you could ever have on a WordPress site. Yeah,
I think anybody who's anybody in WordPress has it like totally written into their WP-CLI scripts. So if you want to like be a real true WordPress developer, just ask anybody in the community. Or don't ask them. Just take my word for it. It's on every install of the good developers. Next question would be any great ideas of somebody who would be a great guest to come on the roundtable?
Everyone. I mean, there are so many talented people in the community. That's the most difficult question you've asked all night, because I could just start looking in my Twitter feed of tweets popping in and give you names. I don't even know where to start. What have other people said? I haven't watched your whole backlog, but I feel like there's got to be like one name that keeps coming up. So I'm gonna say Matt Mullenweg. There we go. Interview Matt, and you're golden.
Okay, so he's not confirmed yet, but tentatively, I feel like we should give our audience a sneak peek. We've got confirmed for September. We've got Michelle Schulp, Pippin Williamson, and Topher DeRosia. So those are our next upcoming confirmed guests. They're going to be on the roundtable, so we'll look forward to that. Brad, any questions that we didn't ask that maybe we should have?
No, because all the other questions uncover, just the skeletons in my closet. No, I don't think there's anything else I want to share. I'm on Twitter at Brad Parbs, and I'm on GitHub, github.com/BradP. That's all you need to know to find me on the internet and stalk me.
I've been stalking you for a while. Yeah, our pleasure. All right.
Well, thanks for joining us. That was quite interesting. I'm still not going to give you access to any of my websites. And by the way, since we forgot, Kellen is a daddy now, so congratulations to him. And that's his job being here. I don't believe it, but that's what he says.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Kellen Mace just had a son this past week. He's another member of the roundtable. He would be here today. He regrets because he's a big Brad Parbs fan, one of the club, and so he wishes he could be here today, and hopes that maybe he'll come back on the show again, because he's got a lot he'd like to ask you as well, just like we did. So definitely, thanks a lot, Brad, for joining us today. We are thrilled that you were able to take the time to come by. Our audience is just blown away.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm still getting tweets from people about logout roulette and awesome lessons from Brad Parbs today. So thanks a lot for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, guys, that's episode 19.
Thanks, guys.